Well, hello all. Nick and I are pleased to be joined by Kristjan Hebert again, and we'd like to continue the conversation where we left off last time about Kristjan, how you manage your team and how you're putting the right people in the right places. You seem to have a lot of knowledge in that area, and so we'd love to keep that conversation going. So to start out, be curious, where do you find your employees to build your team at?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's one thing that we do different is we're not necessarily looking for good employees. We're just looking for good people, right? So maybe we've done a fair bit of work in the last 5 years, especially on our org chart, and we call it, it's more of an accountability chart. So I spend a lot of time talking that we build our farm like a hockey team, not like a corporate culture. So, and it goes back to a mentor once said to me, if a CEO and a janitor are both doing their job well, who do you notice if they get fired? Who do you notice first? Well, you notice the janitor first, right? Nobody likes dirty bathrooms, and that happens in about 6 hours. And if a CEO is doing their job right, you really shouldn't notice for at a minimum 30 days, right? And so that was the part that I struggled with, is that if the janitor is every bit as important as the CEO, then why do we have this hierarchy? So ours is more of an accountability chart, like a hockey team. You need goal scorers when you got someone on a breakaway, and you need goalies when the other team's on a breakaway. And that's how we build the team, is to find strengths in areas where we're currently weak at, and then look for good people that fit our values and have the skill set. They don't necessarily have to have grown up on a farm and have 10 years farm experience and, want to work for nothing and work forever, which I hate to say it, but a lot of job ads that I read looking for farm workers, that's kind of how they read.
Can you touch base on the most green employee you've had on the farm that's ended up being a success? Anybody with just
green?
The most somebody with very little farm experience that you've kind of that has turned out to be a successful employee for your farm?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had everything from someone that has never been on a farm before, but they had a lot of oil patch experience. And so I find, you think about the oil patch, those individuals are very used to shift work. They're very used to long hours. They're very used to, when the times are good, you work really, really hard, and then on breakup, you catch up on your sleep and your family time. They're usually quite mechanical because they've been working, 12-hour shifts in the middle of nowhere when it's really cold. They're also really used to relying on a team, because most of the jobs they were doing in the oil patch couldn't be done by one person. So that's probably, when it comes to green based on a farm, that would be some of our biggest successes. And then we've definitely had high school students and students from abroad that have come over with, the experience of running a John Deere lawnmower. And yes, it takes time, right? Their first job's running a rock picker, and you got to teach them even how to turn the GPS on. But kind of what I find now is that, we are large enough that we can run a bit of a buddy system for the first 30 days at least, and where they work side by side with somebody. And it's amazing how much just somebody helping you shovel a bin of grain, or helping you sweep the floor, or helping you pressure wash a semi, or I don't know how many hours a year we just spend moving vehicles around, right? We got 50 some fields, and we'll move 4 times a day. So like, all those little things really do add up to making everyone's day better. When you finish your 12 or 14-hour shift and you get out of the air seeder or the sprayer or the combine that everyone deems to be the most important jobs, and you walk up and your truck's running at the edge of that field, and you don't have a 45-minute commute just to get to your truck, which is the opposite way of your house, that can really change things in a seeding or harvest season where you're really pushing the crew hard, right? So that 45 minutes can make everybody's day better. And that's maybe where we've relaxed a bit and understood that those jobs are just as important, and we don't have to hire somebody that can jump right into a sprayer all the time.
Yeah. You mentioned on our previous call that you have some crew leaders in place.
Yep.
Do you try to hire for that trait, or do those people just kind of naturally bubble up once they're on the team?
Yeah, I said to Kyle when we were visiting beforehand, I mean, you make enough mistakes and you eventually get the odd thing right. So I would say I'm not a big fan of hiring crew leaders in that position, because I think to be a good crew leader, you have to have the trust and respect of the people that you're about to lead. And some people feel that they're crew leaders because of the job that they were in prior, when in fact that the place that they prior worked, the only way to make more money was to be a crew leader. They're actually really poor at managing people. So I would say I specifically hire for my operations manager and my CFO. I specifically hired for those two roles. But the group underneath that, the crew leaders, I would say it's a lot more likely that we hire good people and then watch which ones turn into leaders. I'm not saying they're any better at any of the operational jobs than anybody else. There's just certain people that are able to look 3 or 4 steps in advance and keep 3 or 4 people efficient versus just themselves. And that's really what defines a crew leader, right? Like you can't manage a crew if you can't keep more than yourself efficiently busy. And so I would say it's more by osmosis, the crew leader positions. And this, as I said, this last 5 years, we've spent a lot of time on this. One of the reasons that we grew, if you asked a bunch of people, would probably say I only care about acres, but I actually only care about people and margin. And so the people side of it, I found that the smaller we were, the more clouded and overlapped your job descriptions and your expectations are. And that's what really frustrates people, right? If you go to work every day and your job description and the expectation is you just do whatever I tell you to do whenever I tell you to do it, and hopefully faster than I told you, like that gets pretty frustrating for most people. The normal population likes to know at least 80% of what they're going to do in a day or in a month or in a year, right? Those of us that run farms, I mean, we enjoy that our day changes every second. And, you know, I kind of call us the chief firefighter, right? We love that we got a gas can in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other, and that's what makes up our day. But that's not the general population. So really, one of the main reasons we've grown is I think we can have significantly better people because they're doing more of what they love doing 80% of the time, which makes them happier. And I don't know about you guys, but if I'm doing something I love and I'm happy, I'm way more efficient and way more productive. Like the easiest way to kill my productivity is tell me to do something I hate.
Yeah. One more quick question on the crew leader concept. I'm guessing your farm, do you have 4 drills on your farm for seeding?
3 drills, 3 80-foot drills.
So would you have 3 crew leaders then?
Well, so I didn't actually, the drills run together in the same field pretty much all the time for efficiency reasons. So the way we kind of set our crews up is I have like a lead operators crew. So that group would be the ones that run the drills, the combines, the sprayers. And that crew leader, so he's in charge of things like making sure the prescriptions all work in the units. And when the units leave the yard, they're ready. And then we have an internal logistics crew leader. So that person's in charge of everything that needs to move from our shop to the fields and back. And it's a pretty major job. And then we have the external and shop crew leader. So that person kind of manages the shop and everything leaving the farm to go to a third party. So, you know, our truck routes, et cetera. And I used to think very similar along the lines the way you asked, Nick, of having crew leaders for each individual unit. But then the more we thought about it is we kind of have 3 big projects going on, right? We have the project in the field. We have the project of keeping what's in the field going. So that's between the shop and the field. And we have the project of the shop going to all our third party customers. And we just looked at it a little bit different. The other thing is in seeding, I'm still really involved in seeding. I am one of the air seeder operators. I don't know that'll ever change. I mean, some of my mentors will say I waste too many hours running an air seeder, and my answer back is, you know, how good of a farmer are you if you seed a poor crop? To me, it is one of my unique abilities. So I am very involved in crew leaders in seeding, but you know, the guy that is our crew leader of that group is on the night shift when I'm on the day shift or et cetera. So, but that's kind of how we decided to set up our crews, was more project based than individual equipment piece.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. That's smart.
You mentioned a operations manager and then a chief operations officer. So help me understand. It's the middle of seeding, and you're there. What's your role relative to the COO and the ops manager and the crew leader? Map that out for us.
Yeah, so I have a COO and then my crew leaders. The other person I mentioned was a CFO. So he actually is virtual. So he runs out of Saskatoon, runs my whole consulting division and the CFO portion of the farm. So if you were in seeding, all you would really see me doing is I run a 12 or 14 or 16-hour shift on the drill, and I take phone calls from the crew leaders and my COO with questions like solve problems. When it comes to who's answering, what operations are going on, those all go directly to my COO. So, what field are we going to next? My father runs our tillage crew, so our COO will send him and the tillage crew to a certain area of the farm, and they'll be feeding back information to the COO of which fields are ready first. So then they'll direct the seeders to go there. So I'm really just kind of in charge of the seeders inside that field, making sure everything's operating correctly while we're running, and especially on my own unit. But if who's setting the shifts and who's going to be where, that's still all going straight to my COO's phone, not to mine.
Got it.
And that it's by design. I mean, as we grew, I probably still have 30 to 50 phone calls a day from suppliers and customers, and the odd problem that comes up that I just have to make the decision on. So then if you add in all the calls from your truckers and your rock pickers and your third party suppliers, and I was just not answering so many that we weren't efficient. So one of the first things we did when I hired my operations manager or COO was really kind of delegate the duties and the phone calls between him and I, and my father's still really involved too. So which phone calls are going where, and that we just trust that person to deal with it. It does not need to be told to the other two, right? Just deal with it. That's your job. Every call we get there goes forwarded to that person.
Yeah, that's an interesting point around decision making. What the culture of decision making? How, when do people in the field feel like they can make that decision? When does it need to be escalated? At what level? That can you walk us through how you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that in general, we try to be as prepared as we can, especially for seeding. So we'll have, we have seeding packages in every tractor of exactly what's going on every field and what rates and what variable rate map you're using and who's going to be bringing the supply truck. So a lot of that stuff, they can make all those decisions because they have the information in order to do it. Usually where I still got to make decisions is, if we have to make a last minute crop change because of field conditions, or if there's a major breakdown, or if we got a couple people sick that day, those will be the kinds of things that I'm still deciding on. But when it comes to the general operation, I mean, I had one drill break down. I was about 40 minutes from the end of my shift, and I had kind of shortchanged that day. So I was at a 16-hour shift, and the drill had a major breakdown. Like one of the hitches basically ripped right off. So it was about a 6-hour fix. And I went to bed. I had my two mechanical guys and my father and my ops guy took over. And when I got back, 6 hours later, the drill had been going for an hour already. So, I think that we empower those people that are ready to handle the responsibility as quick as we can. But we also know that there's times there's times that the guys say that they got three bosses between, me and Dad and our ops manager too. So we're not perfect, but we're getting a lot better at it.
I have to ask the question. This is strain off topic a little bit, but most of the people listening to this will be corn and soybean farmers. That's just the nature of the farming population. With your crop rotation in Canada, your bread and butter crop is barley. What is the most you've ever, like the last 5, 6, 7 years? What percentage of your farm is the most you can plant to one crop? Like 40%, to keep within rotation, 40% of your acres in one crop?
So depending on new land as we pick it up to get it blocked up, we've been as high as 50, but 40 would be a lot more normal, that we would have no individual crop over 40% for us.
Would that typically be barley or canola?
That would typically be canola. Barley for us is our hard one in that, so it's a heavy seed rate. So we're seeding it at like 3.5 bushels an acre. So, I mean, when I have 3 drills running in barley 24 hours a day, we'll do somewhere around 1,500 acres a day. So, I mean, if you do that math, I mean, I'm going through 6,000 bushels of barley a day, and we'll be going through 65,000 gallons of liquid fertilizer and about 200 ton of dry fertilizer every 24 hours when we're seeding barley. Where canola is a low seed rate, it's only 3 or 4 pounds an acre, right? So you can fill with canola and seed for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the canola is usually the bigger rotation, and then barley, when it comes to harvest, is our hard crop too. It's more bushels and it's more finicky when it comes to quality. So that's why we have a hard time pushing it up that high.
Sure. Back on topic, talking about HR. In our last call, you mentioned you pay hourly. You've implemented overtime. Any thoughts on just how you set those hourly rates? Is it just your intuition of the local market? Do you have any objective data you look at when setting your pay rates for your team?
Yeah, so I mean, when I first left the accounting firm, that's really what I built my HR and pay grade system around. So not because I thought they did it perfectly, but my theory was is if I want good people, how can I pay them less than John Deere or Myers Norris Penny or the local, truck dealership in town? Like, I think the number one reason farms don't get good people is they try to pay $5 or $10 an hour under market, right? So the easiest rule on what somebody's worth is what would somebody else pay them,
Yep.
right? And that gives you the bottom of the market. If somebody else would pay them $25 an hour, then you should be paying them $25 an hour, unless there's a reason, right? Like if they have to be away from home 365 days a year to get that money, well, then there maybe is a reason for you to pay less, right? That's kind of the oil patch to farm discussion. But whether you're a mechanic at Deere or a mechanic for me, there's not a lot of difference in job description there or hours. So there's your minimum. And then the value is what do they provide your farm or your operation of value over and above what they could provide that other operation, right? So for us, we try to look at that, especially with some of our really good people around, when do they go over and above job expectations because they do really believe in our values and they really do get their role and they enjoy who they work with. And that's where you find the areas of higher dollars per hour than they could probably make anywhere else. And we have variations. I probably have people that I'm slightly under on, and I have people that I'm over on, and I got a couple people at the top that get profit share because I know that they could go make more money somewhere else on an hourly basis, but they believe so much in what we're doing and they're so a big a part of it that I share profits with them, which then they end up making more than they could anywhere else. From that perspective, but they understand that I can only do that on the years that we do really well, and on the years that we're taking one in the face, it's really hard for me to pay over market rate. So we're just trying to look at innovative ways to structure pay in order to do that. I would say little things, right? Like cell phone allowances, and most of our ops guys get trucks as part of it. It started out, honestly, when I was younger, I couldn't hire anybody that had a good enough vehicle to get to work. It pissed me off. Right. But then it kind of turned into a retention type bonus, right? You get a truck after 3 or 6 months. I can't remember the exact date. I have to go back and read the handbook. And if you stay with us for 5 years, that truck's yours. Yep. Right. And I get a reliable truck that I don't mind jumping in, right? Because it is my decal on it and I'm paying for it. We try not to use them very much, but it's okay if we jump in them to move around the farm and stuff, and they get a truck to be proud of that doesn't cost them, near as much as if they were paying for it themselves. And so little things like that, I think, can add up. And I would say my office staff is a big part of the glue of our culture. I mean, Christmas time this year, and our controller had nice new black jackets and Carhartt toques with Hebert Grain Ventures decals on them, but she had thought ahead enough to not have big splashy decals. They're more lighter and on the sleeves so that the people want to wear them all the time. And she's really good at coming up with that kind of stuff and giving credit to people on our social media. And so I can't take much credit for it, honestly. I'm more about saying where we're going and why it's important and why I'm so passionate about it. And then the crew themselves, right from my ops manager to my controller to everybody, they find the little ways to make it fun, in my opinion.
For those that don't know, what's a toque?
A toque's the thing we wear on our head when it's below -20.
Yeah.
I can't help but notice the emphasis on strong culture, strong identity. That it seems like someone that's coming to work on your farm, they know who they're working for, and they know the institutional values that just sort of exist as a common culture, a shared set of values. I assume that's you've worked hard to try to establish that and maintain it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and you try and make it easy, right? I mean, one of our values is can't isn't an option, right? I'm not going to lie to you. It came from a Ford commercial. We don't even drive Fords. But the whole theory of it is we hate the word no, right? And we hate the word can't. Usually can't just means it's going to be tough. Well, then let's just round up the troops and fix the problem, right? So you want the values, they can't be 3 or 4 or 5 sentences long on the wall and have a whole bunch of words that only the CEO understands. That doesn't make any sense, right? Growth is who we are, is another value. Like if you're going to work for us, we are going to grow, whether that's in acres or in vineyard size or in a partnership with John Deere or who knows what. It's just who we are. That we don't believe in standing still, right? Inflation's 3%. If we can't go up 3% on average every year, we're going backwards. And I got no plan on this business dying. So those little things, I think, they are really important, right? And I think the other thing is I mean, for the last 50 years, I would say, you know, farms really tried to stay behind the door, stay really secretive, just whether it was neighbors or we just didn't want people in town to understand, or our suppliers. And don't get me wrong, there's parts of it that I wish that as many people didn't know who Hebert Grain Ventures are as they do from speaking and doing stuff like this. However, when it comes to, you know, a kid in New Zealand typing in, I want to go work on a farm in Canada, there's a pretty good chance we show up somewhere. And there's a pretty good chance they hear this podcast or some other podcast and they're like, hey, like that kind of sounds interesting. I want to go talk to them, right? So when you talked earlier about how do we find good team members, I mean, it's honestly the main reason I still do a lot of stuff like this, right? My second reason is, you know, we've made a lot of mistakes to get where we are and we continue to make it. And I think one of the reasons agriculture doesn't move as fast as it does is we're so independent, we won't share those mistakes, right? So I do have a real passion for the industry to be better, you know, by the time my kids take over the operation. But the other and the main one is it's really good for finding team members, right? If you don't put yourself out there, nobody can find you.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to, you mentioned making mistakes. If somebody on your team makes a mistake, or if you have a conflict between people on the team, you know, how do you handle, you know, any thoughts, tips, ideas on just handling conflicts, handling, you know, situations where people break something, mess up? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think to start off, my COO and I are both pretty upfront individuals. So I mean, number one, don't let it fester on. We deal with it pretty quickly. It might not be right on the spot because sometimes everybody needs 24 hours, right? But and I mean, if you talk to my team, you'd also say there's overreactions a lot of times too. And we're not going to hide that. It's something we're working on. When it comes to stuff breaking, the philosophy that we've really tried to implement, and actually it's one of our goals for this 2021 season, is with our group meetings once a week, everything that goes wrong, the first thing we need to know is, was it preventable or not? First question. If the answer is preventable, then you have something to work on. If it wasn't preventable, that just means it was a piece of iron failure or whatever, right? But it was preventable. Now you're going down the path of what process could have prevented this? Or lastly, and hopefully not the only reason, is there just a person problem, right? Do we have a person problem? But what we're finding is that most of the time it's a process that failed or wasn't even there that caused the situation, right? Something as simple as someone, you know, turning something too sharp down the road and putting an auger in the ditch and bending something. Well, nobody had showed them that the axle steered. No, it was never told to anybody, right? I mean, I got it on my list to build the crew wants to have pictures of every field with me to put an X on it for the approach we plan to fill at, and the only rock pile they're allowed to dump rocks on. Because there's nothing that pisses me off more than secondhand rocks, i.e. someone that dumped rocks somewhere I don't want them, right? But I had never made the book. The picture of this is the only place you're allowed to dump those rocks, and this is the normal place you're going to bring the semis. So I think that in a lot of cases, a lot of farms would, if you look through it, you will find that most things are preventable. And in a lot of cases, it's because the process wasn't defined or explained. And I'm sorry, but the only finger to point in that situation is the people at the top, not the person that did it.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, Kristjan, this has been fantastic. We really appreciate you taking the time. We will continue this same conversation at future dates, but I think that we should probably wrap this one up for now. We really want to say thanks to all of everyone who's been watching these, and we'd love to have you. If there's additional questions that we're not asking that you'd love to see answered, please let us know. We would love to incorporate them. Nick, Kristjan, any final words?
No, appreciate Kristjan's perspective. I think we could probably turn this into 2-3 hours if we wanted to, and so we're going to made a point to keep it concise today, but really appreciate Kristjan's willingness to hop on and share. I think he does a great job of sharing, of mixing, kind of high level management and real world experience on the farm. So thanks, Kristjan.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, as I said, I mean, education is the only way to get better, and the best education is actually usually making the mistake the first time, right? The hope is to fix it, that you don't do it the second time. And I'd follow your guys's, methods in that. It'd be great if people sent questions into you, Kyle, or made comments on the YouTube videos, etc., to lead where we go with future conversations. I mean, I'm pretty open about everything we do on our farm, and I know you guys are the same with your businesses. So it'd be great if anyone has any burning questions, don't be afraid to ask them. There's not much that scares us, and we can design the conversations around what people are looking for.
100%. Love that.
Awesome.
What a great note to end on. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Perfect.
And take care. Have a great day.
You bet. See you later.